Hello and welcome to Oceania Weekly. My name's Stephanie Greenfield. The ceasefire ceremony of the Korean War was held in Alexandra Park. Some Korean War veterans, the Korean Consul General and other representatives of the Korean society participated in the ceremony. It was the last official ceremony for the Korean War veterans, whose numbers have been decreasing sharply every year. The war veterans are now all over 90 years old. They said it's very sad finishing the official ceremony, but they hope the relationship between Korea and New Zealand lasts forever. Korean people here in New Zealand want to keep in touch with their descendants and maintain good relationships. Some Korean War veterans are worrying about the situation of the Korean Peninsula.
This is the last get-together of the Korean veterans. I was 16 when I was in Korea. Lots of good memories. We weren't able to go ashore too often, but we enjoyed being there to help.
New Zealand politicians described the new British Prime Minister as flamboyant, seasoned, colourful and buffoon-like. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said she wouldn't use the word buffoon, but instead described Boris Johnson as seasoned. Ardern said Johnson knows New Zealand well, and that is a really positive starting point for a relationship between the two countries. The main concern is Johnson's determination to take Britain out of the European Union by the end of October, and what that would mean for countries like New Zealand. The UK cannot formally sign trade deals until it leaves the EU, but it has already been talking to New Zealand about preparations for a future FTA. Trade Minister David Parker said New Zealand's position was unchanged. 2 people have died from listeria infections in Australia after eating contaminated smoked salmon. A third person also contracted the illness, known as listeriosis, but survived. The 3 cases happened in different states. Australia's Chief Medical Officer said the people who died were both aged above 70 and had underlying health conditions. The Tasmanian government said the state's salmon producers have been cleared of food safety breaches following the listeria cases in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. Officials said pregnant women, the elderly, infants and those with weakened immune systems were most at risk of severe symptoms. India is making a big push for electric vehicles, signalling a turning point in its clean energy policy. In 2017, the Transport Minister of India, Nitin Gadkari, shocked the automobile industry when he announced that he intended for India to move to 100% electric cars by 2030. This was an ambitious target given that even the UK and France were hoping to phase out conventional combustion engine cars by 2040. In the financial year that ended in March, about 3.4 million passenger cars were sold in India against 21.2 million two-wheelers, according to data released by Indian automobile manufacturers. The number of three-wheelers sold totaled 0.7 million. Prince Charles and his wife Camilla are headed to New Zealand in November. From carrying his own toilet seat to having an orthopaedic bed sent ahead of his arrival, here are some of the unexpected items Charles is said to request when he's away from home. The Daily Mail reported that before a visit to one friend in northeast England, Charles sent his staff ahead a day early with a truck carrying furniture to replace the perfectly appropriate fittings in the guest room. And not just the odd chest of drawers, the truck contained nothing less than Charles and Camilla's complete bedrooms, including the prince's orthopaedic bed, along with his own linen. The warehouse has recalled a range of children's pyjamas because they could strangle or burn the wearer. It has recalled the ponchos, made to look like a unicorn, cat or Minnie Mouse, as the draw cord can become tangled and choke the child wearing them. The recall notice, issued on the 24th of July, said that they may present a fire hazard if they are exposed to a naked flame. It advises anyone who bought one of the $18 ponchos to stop using it and return it to the nearest warehouse store for a full refund. All children's nightwear must have a fire hazard information label according to the Children's Commission website. Any clothing which is too flammable cannot be sold. Police have arrested 9 people in a 4-day operation in Northland, targeting the manufacture, distribution and supply of methamphetamine and other drugs in the region. Police said that 7 firearms, many of them prohibited, were seized along with 2 tasers and about $60,000 worth of stolen property. 3 women and 6 men, all aged between 28 and 62, were arrested in the operation. The firearms included a .357 Magnum pistol, a shotgun, as well as 2 semi-automatic rifles now classified as prohibited under the new firearms law, as well as thousands of dollars worth of stolen property, which included a flatbed truck. Drugs such as heroin, cannabis and methamphetamine were also recovered. The number of foreigners buying local houses has fallen sharply as restrictions on overseas ownership have hit. Official figures show 183 residential properties were sold to foreigners in the 3 months ending in June, which was 0.5% of all sales. That was down from a year ago when 1,116 properties were sold to foreign buyers, with the inner city Auckland being the buying hotspot. The government brought in restrictions on foreign property buying late last year. About 2/3 of sales in the past 3 months were in the Auckland region, and the bulk of those were apartments in the central city. A Korean couple from Hamilton have amassed thousands of followers on social media by singing songs in Te Reo Māori. It was their love for music that drew the couple together, but singing in Te Reo is a relatively new challenge for Daniel and Ashley Chung. They began singing in Te Reo 3 years ago as a way to learn about New Zealand culture. Although the duo do not understand Te Reo, they recite recordings until they have memorised a song. They say there are many similarities between Te Reo and Korean, which makes pronunciation of Te Reo words easier. They have more than 10,000 followers on social media, and recently they have been invited to sing at a number of Matariki celebrations. Countdown is putting an age restriction for buying energy drinks from its supermarkets. From early September, people will need to be 16 years or older to buy them. Countdown says it's introducing this in response to the concerns about the impact high sugar and highly caffeinated drinks have on children. Countdown said that energy drinks are not recommended for young people, and they already have to carry a warning on the pack. Health advocate Robin Tumath said other supermarkets should follow Countdown's lead and put an age restriction on the people buying energy drinks. She said the restriction will help reduce diabetes and tooth decay. The most senior defence and foreign affairs figures in the United States are coming to Australia for ministerial talks. United Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defence Secretary Mark Esper will meet their Australian counterparts in Sydney on the 4th of August. Australian Foreign Affairs Minister Maurice Payne and Defence Minister Linda Reynolds said the discussions will focus on collaboration in the Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific. They said they will discuss Australia's Pacific step-up, closer military-to-military cooperation, and continuing effort to combat terrorism and violent extremism online. They will also address key issues of regional security. Defence Secretary of the United States, Dr. Esper, was sworn into his role at the White House ceremony last week. Ahead of his visit down under, he talked up the importance of strengthening alliances. The latest Summer New Zealand Solidarity Foundation Incorporated, which is a Filipino migrant community in New Zealand, in partnership with the Conservation Volunteers New Zealand, conducted a community planting day on Sunday the 28th of July 2019. Around 60 volunteers helped plant native trees at Atiu Creek Regional Park in Kaipara. The group were able to plant approximately 2,200 trees in only 2 hours. Part of the goals of these Filipino migrants is to actively contribute to New Zealand on an environmental awareness, conservation and nature protection. At the same time, raise awareness and respect among the Kiwis and Filipinos regarding the special status of Māori people as tangata whenua's rich culture. It is Conservation Volunteers New Zealand goal to acknowledge Māori's dynamic culture and their ongoing affinity and cultural obligations within Aotearoa. Last year, Conservation Volunteers New Zealand supported over 100,000 hours of volunteering and planted over 150,000 native trees. Now we're going to cross over to Voice of America.
First responders, known as the White Helmets, rushed to help out civilians after government warplanes bombed the town of Ariha in northwestern Idlib province. In addition to those killed, many people were injured.
2 missiles hit the residential area simultaneously. There are a lot of injured and some people were killed. There's no final toll yet.
Human rights observers say more than 100 civilians, about 1/3 of them children, have been killed in just the past 10 days in southern Idlib province as the Syrian government escalates its offensive against the remaining rebel-held areas. The United Nations says several hundred people have been killed since the offensive intensified in April, and about 400,000 were forced to flee their homes.
We are civilians. We have nothing to do with this. These are all children, women, old people, and young people. We are not terrorists. There are strikes every day, killing, blood.
Civilians in the remaining rebel-held strongholds in Idlib, Hama, and Aleppo provinces are protected by a buffer zone set in September by Assad's supporter Russia and opposition backer Turkey. Rights groups say Russian warplanes have since participated in the Syrian government air raids on civilians in rebel areas. The UN Human Rights Agency in Geneva has condemned the attacks.
It seems highly unlikely, given the persistent pattern of such attacks, that they're all being hit by accident. Intentional attacks against civilians are war crimes, and those who have ordered them or carried them out are criminally responsible for their actions.
Russia and the Syrian government have denied targeting civilians and have accused the White Helmets of aiding militant groups. They say their attacks are targeting Al-Qaeda-linked jihadists who violate the truce. The UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet has expressed concern about the apparent international indifference to the rising civilian death toll caused by bombing of Idlib and parts of Hama and rural Aleppo. She has condemned the Syrian government and its allies for the relentless campaign of airstrikes on residential homes and civilian infrastructure, such as medical facilities, schools, and markets. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Thank you for joining us here at Oceania Weekly. I'll see you next week.